Well, hello everyone, and welcome to this little lesson where I'm going to be walking you step by step through how to paint the Christmas Quail. It's a seasonal painting, so you can use it for the winter season to make a holiday card with. So I look forward to teaching you, and I hope this lesson is as fun for you as it is for me. So thanks everyone for tuning in. So to start off with, I'm just gonna sketch out where the little quail's gonna go. I've got just some of this burnt umber. I could add a little bit of black in there. I just wanna put a little ground in where I'm gonna have them stand. And oh, by the way, this is just the underpaint. I just used a little bit of the, what color did I use now? I think it was just some of this Liquitex Basic primary red. I think that's what I use, primary red, because it's very transparent, just to put something down on that canvas, cover it up. And now I'm just gonna sketch out where our little quail friend is. And just kind of doodling right now, and then I'll fix it later. I think I gotta definitely move the head a little bit this way because he's on a little angle. I want to have enough room for everything to fit. And I'm just using a little bit of that burnt umber, and I'm actually cheating a little and just using a little water in there. I know I don't recommend adding water to Watermixable oil paint because it definitely does start to degrade the paint. So just for drawing purposes, I don't mind adding a little water to it just to get things moving along. And this is just a really fun little whimsical painting. And I just thought of the idea because quails are very popular, believe it or not. Whenever I paint a quail, generally speaking, it's one of the quicker paintings to sell. And I'm guessing it's just because they are so cute, and they are the state bird in California, so that's a big piece of land with lots of people that may or may not know that. I'm not sure if they do, but a lot of them would. So you do get maybe more people searching for quail paintings. So I just thought, anyways, regardless of all that, I thought it would be kind of cute to do. I just thought of how they're a real character bird, so I thought it would look kind of cute to put a little winter flair on it. A winter spin on it, I mean. So I'm just kind of looking at the reference, and of course, as always, I try to keep things real simple. And so I make sure I get that. The quail in the picture looks like he just had a bath. He's kind of a little bit shaggy. And then Of course, it's so cute, the little baby quail with the daddy quail, so I'll put that in there too. And I just got to get the angle of this bird's, he's looking down, and I really don't want to mess that up because he's looking down at the baby. The more I look, see, it takes my brain a while to start cluing into everything. He's looking down at the little baby. Just keep kind of looking at your reference and sketch in. And then I'm going to sketch the little baby, and I want to keep it really loose and abstract. So he's got all these little feathers. They look like little, kind of like little golf balls going across the street when I see them here in Arizona. And this is a little baby boy, because you can see he's got the little bit of a feather forming on his little head. So that's pretty cute. And then I'm gonna put a little Santa hat on him and a little scarf. And you could have the scarf hanging down, or you could have the scarf maybe going behind like that. Maybe that's better. It looks like it's kind of blowing in the wind a bit. And on the little baby, you could do the same thing. And we'll work out the details after. But that's a good start. So get the angle right there. Maybe raise up his body a tiny bit so his legs are a tiny bit longer. Okay, so next I want to kind of block in that quail kind of gray. And so I'm going to switch to a little larger brush. This is just something I got. I think I got this at Michael's or something. It's just a little square brush that you can, quickly get that color in. I have a color that I like. It's called Grayish Blue from Cobra, and that color also really works. So we could just get some of that burnt sienna and some ultramarine blue. And I'm going to take a little bit of white and add that into it. So I get a kind of a darker gray blue color first. And I'm going to put some of that in. Just sort of block in the darker gray around here, and then we'll have this sort of lighter later, but I'm gonna just kind of block it in first. And that's just where I'm gonna put the scarf, so. And of course, I'm just trying to keep this real simple. I mean, just really, real fun, real simple to paint this little winter quail scene here. We don't want to overdo it. And then I'm going to get a little white in there, and now could use some of that blue color. And I'll kind of put in a bit of the lighter feathers. If you get that dark paint in there in the beginning, then you can kind of show off those little feather designs. And same with here. Maybe add a little bit of that transparent brown oxide I got out there and just sort of put in the feathers for that little poof ball. And his little head is kind of a browny color, so I'm going to start mixing in some of that transparent red oxide. I'll put a little bit of that in. On his face. And I'm just getting a little bit of that underbelly color in there. It's sort of almost a bit of yellow ochre in there. Or that, I've got out raw sienna and yellow ochre. And just sort of put that in there. And get some of that transparent red oxide and get those kind of rusty feathers started in there. Okay, so I've kind of blocked in the body pretty quick. I'm just gonna go and get working a little more detail on their little faces. So let me just find a smaller brush. And I'm gonna use some of this black and sort of block in. Block in the face here. And don't worry too much if you don't like the shape of your beak. You can always use your background to sort of recalibrate that. Okay. And then I'm gonna go get, there's some of that white and just sort of, I'll put a little bit of that brown mix so it's not like the brightest white. And even I like to add some blue sometimes just to sort of have that kind of bluey, shadowy blue color. And sort of put in that little stripe that goes underneath the and put this in here. And the little shine on top of his little beak. Add a little more blue for that, just because it kind of shows up more like a beak color. And then there's a little line that kind of carries on from the beak over to the eye, and I'll put that eye shape in there for now. And I'm going to put the little hat, I'll put the little rim in there using that grayish color, and then I'll go and add some white to that blue. Just sort of make that little rim. And same with that little guy there. And I can block in a little bit of that, the hat with some alizarin to start, and then get some of this, like pyrrole red is really bright. I love pyrrole red because it's like the brightest red. Can't see it now against the red background, but it's really, really bright. And I'm going to do the underpaint for the scarves just with a swoop of this bluey color, bluey white. Keeping it real loose. And this little guy's scarf is kind of hanging down. And because I got that red underpaint, you can see the paint kind of lifts off of it. So you could even use, if you have like a little scraper tool, I could use the edge of this little, this is like one of those painting spatulas, and I could scrape away some of the paint, and you can see it makes the red shine through. And that's kind of a fun way of making the stripes. And very whimsical and kind of folky looking when you do it really kind of quick like that. And just sort of adding some marks to that one too. So you can see how fun, you can lift the paint off on these smooth wood canvas panels, which, by the way, you can get these at Jerry's Artorama, these Da Vinci Pro panels. So that's something that I use a lot for these, because I like to make them on the panels, and if people are buying over the years, buying my paintings, they can kind of hang them all on the wall together. And then I like to leave the wood, just like that. Okay, now I can go back to the details. Just gonna get a little white in here and then go back in and put the little kind of eyelid around here. Get some more black and kind of put in some of the eye and the beak, a little more detail. Just a little more shadow, shading. And I like to add a little bit of that reflection on the eye. Just a little detail there. Okay, and same with this little guy. You can't really see much on him. And the beak and everything is actually like a real skin color because he's such a new baby, but I'm just, for the sake of the painting and so that you can see it, I'm making his little beak black. And I'll put a tiny bit of that black feather in, a little bit more there, so it still looks like a new feather, like a baby feather, but you can see it a tiny bit better. And just get a little more of that burnt umber. I'm just going to put a few strokes to show some of the shadow in his little wings. Okay. So as you can see, I'm keeping it real loose there. I'm not getting worried about the scarf being too detailed, but everyone has their own preference there. You could go and make it real detailed, of course. I'm just kind of giving you the inspiration to kind of try it, you know, something different. Now I'm going to go back and do a little more detail on the background, and then I'll go back to the birds. So what I want to do is just get my palette knife, and I'm going to get some of that white, and I just have to think of a color that will kind of look good in the background to make it look wintry. So I've got some different colors. I like to mix it up a little and try different things. So I've got this ice green, which is always a nice, cool kind of, it's really like a almost like a turquoise. It's really bright. And also I'll get like some cobalt blue, and I'm just using a cheaper bottle of this Duo Aqua Oil Cobalt Blue Hue. So whenever it says hue, it means you're getting kind of the fake version of cobalt blue. So a tube that like this, in cobalt blue is a very expensive color. So if you get the real deal, it's probably, you know, 3 to 4 times more expensive. So I just got the hue. It works well for me because I'm not, you know, I'm not really too worried about making it, you know, I'm not worried about it not being perfect, you know. So if you need the real deal, that's fine, but I'm not using it for these paintings because it's just too expensive. So I'm just using this cobalt blue hue, and I've mixed up this ice green, and I'm gonna just kind of put it around and see what happens. And I feel like these are 2 cool colors that will look kind of wintry. And I don't mean cool as in cool, I just mean cool as in temperature. So I'll put a bit of that here and there, and some of that cobalt. I like to mix up the colors in the background just to have some variety. Just keep on keeping on here. And then I'm gonna get some white and some of that green, and I'm just gonna put some of that down. Might even actually use my palette knife a little here and just sort of put the snow on like real nice and kind of thick. And I like to kind of go back in and kind of re-add some of those palette knife marks in with the brush stroke. So it's like kind of a little back and forth there. But I think it looks interesting. And now for the kind of some of the final touches to our quail, I'm going to put a little cobalt into that original quail feather mix and sort of I'll lighten it up a little too, and I can something got on my palette knife there, and I'll put in some of those feathers again with my palette knife. And this is where you can kind of soften some of the edges, and with that cool red background you can see you can make some neat marks. Just soften up some of those little feathery edges there. And get a little lighter mix of that feathery, the chest feathers. So I gotta get, just adding some of that yellow ochre and that raw sienna. And I'll put a little bit of that in there to kind of lighten that up a bit. And then in that rusty color on here, I'm gonna add a little bit of kind of, I got some cad yellow medium here, or no, this is cad yellow deep with some of that transparent red oxide. And I'll put a little bit of that, kind of those rusty feathers in there. And then I'm going to get some of this white and just make a few of those little straight lines that are in there, those feathers that look like little white lines. Okay, so I'm just sort of adding a little bit of those shadows. I can use a little bit of that. I mixed some cobalt into that, and some cobalt blue and some burnt sienna. And I just sort of added that in there to make the darker feathers for the tail. And then now I'll go back and put in a little, I usually don't go with the lighter color for the feet because it sort of takes away, because then you can't see them, but I'll add a little blue in the shadow there just so you can, it lightens them up, but it doesn't make them as light as the background. So I'm adding a little cobalt in there. Don't want to get detailed at all with those little feet, but it does show that there's something going on. And then I'm going to just sort of take away, you know, some of this line, and you know, you can make it now look a little bit more snowy, get a little white, and just sort of make it look more, you know, like the surface is a little bit more snowy. Could even put a little kind of abstract mark for a snowflake or two. Okay, get a little more black and just dab a little more on the eye. And I'm just gonna work on some of those little details, like, you know, around the feet. You can kind of go make them a little skinnier so they look kind of a little more delicate there, especially on the little baby. They do in real life, like if you look at the reference, they do have pretty thick legs, but just so it's not over, it looks kind of overbearing, I'm just gonna just a tiny bit take it down a notch. Okay, so I think that kind of does it. I really like how it turned out. It's super cute. So I hope you had fun. and have fun trying this out. And remember, you don't have to make it complicated to make it look good, because it's a whimsical painting. So remember, don't put pressure on yourself. Try to keep it simple. I may have even gone overboard a little on the details. That's just my nature. I tend to go a little, I sit and go too overboard, but you could even simplify it more, and I hope you give it a try. It's a lot of fun, and I love painting quails, so if you do too, this would be a cute one, and I think it will make a cute, little Christmas card, or you could turn it into like a coaster or something. So anyhow, thanks for following along, and I hope you enjoyed this lesson, and don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel and share it with a friend. Thank you so much, everybody.